Hey guys, what's going on? A couple of fun conversations inside the studio today, my day of play. We started things off with Jon Walczak. I was with him back in 2020. This man is a true journalist when it comes to investigating missing people, murderers, and other crimes. And now something's going on in Arizona. You are going to totally get into this because they're using AI technology on this podcast. And then tonight, we reached all the way down into Australia, from the Carolinas to Australia, to talk with Sally Hunter, who's written a new book that deals with the open seas. I mean, you can have all your journalistic things put in National Enquirer and stuff like that, but she's taken her experiences in the ocean and turned it into a story, and that's with Sally Hunter. Hey, thanks for being here, and thanks for supporting my day of play.
Good morning, Arrow.
Hey, what's going on, party animals?
Hey, Arrow, how are you?
Fantastic. How about you, John?
I sent you an email about Shad White.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so just check that. You'll have till 50 with John.
Excellent. Good morning. How are you doing, John?
Good to be back with you. It's been a few years.
My, how time flies, right?
Yeah. 4 years, a slightly different world that we live in these days.
Oh my God. Well, let me tell you how different it is. Look at what you're doing with AI technology, and I want listeners to know, get it out of your system, go listen to the voice that's on there, and then start from the very beginning and take in this story.
Yeah, so in April 2001, there was this little ranch in Scottsdale, Arizona, in the suburbs. At 8:42 a.m. in the morning, it explodes. Police and firefighters show up. They pretty quickly find 3 bodies in the rubble: Mary, the mother, and Brittany and Bobby, the 2 younger children. And obviously, the question is, where's the father? Yeah. So police immediately kind of try to keep it quiet. He's a suspect privately, but they're hoping that he's going to show up and just say he was camping or hunting or something. Unfortunately, he doesn't. So 10 days later, a man in a forest, a remote part of Arizona, finds Mary Fisher's SUV abandoned in the woods. It's near an Indian reservation. It's near caves. And so there's this massive search in the wilderness for any sign of Robert Fisher. And unfortunately, they don't find any. They don't find his body. They don't find any of his belongings. So the question for the last 23 years has been, did Robert Fisher die in the wild? Did he escape? And I've researched this now for 2 years, and I very strongly believe that Robert Fisher is alive. That's something that's shared by some of the lead investigators. So the great hope with this is we're kind of a Hail Mary to throw this to the audience. And when we say we need audience help, this is one where we really do need the audience's help. So, some of the things that we did, we worked with several forensic artists to do a new age-progressed image of Robert Fisher using photos that have never been published of him. And you can see that on our show art for Missing in Arizona. And or you can go to neon33.com where we have a wanted poster. But I'd like everybody to look at that. And if it looks like anyone you know who could be Robert Fisher, please contact us or contact law enforcement.
It's not just looking at the picture. You actually challenge them to listen to the voice, this voice that you've got on there. If you've heard this voice before, if you recognize this voice, reach out to me right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. So one of the things I'm always looking for ways to use novel technology. And obviously, in the last few years, we've gotten used to AI generated images, AI generated voice. My brother sends me clips where you have like Johnny Cash singing hip hop songs, and it sounds like it's Johnny Cash. It's fascinating and fun. So we were looking, well, what can we do with this to move the case forward? And the hard thing with this case is there's not a lot of source audio. So there's a ton of you, there's a ton of me, as people can make us say whatever they want us to say, which is kind of interesting, kind of scary. But as far as Robert Fisher, he disappeared in 2001, and we don't have a lot of his voice. So one of the things that I did is I used these tapes, these home videos that were rescued from the rubble of his house in a fire safe. And I cataloged every single second of his voice that we have, down to the 1 second little snippet, put it in a Google Sheet. And then we worked with this company called Altered AI, usually works with bigger Hollywood productions. And we're a slightly smaller production, but they were very kind and they worked with us. And they built us based on those snippets that we put together. We only had about 10 minutes of source material and very crackly 80s video, 90s video. And they built us a custom model, so we were able to replicate Robert Fisher's voice. And it's interesting because one of the things when you speak to forensic artists about age-progressed images, they tell you we're not necessarily trying to give you an image of exactly what he looks like today.
Right.
We're trying to give you an image of what he could possibly look like because they really want to spark in people, like, is this kind of familiar to someone I know? And maybe he has different glasses or facial hair or something, with the hope that they'll contact law enforcement. And the way that we view the AI voice is exactly like that, which is when you combine the forensic image of Robert Fisher and the voice recreation of Robert Fisher, somebody might say, oh, that kind of looks like my neighbor. That kind of sounds like him. And then maybe that'll motivate them to come forward to us or to law enforcement. I
got to be honest with you about something, because the video that you played inside the first episode for the birthday, I didn't believe Robert Fisher at all. When the way he was talking with his wife and everything like that, I just felt like that. No, this guy's a con artist. I can hear it. Because he was using higher pitched tones that really kind of set me off as a listener.
Yeah, it's interesting. So that obviously, that's his real voice. That's him. And It's fascinating because I went through every single piece of video, but beyond just doing it for the AI, I also just wanted to see, well, what can we witness about Robert Fisher? What can we learn? And there are little snippets in there. So, for example, in the first episode, you hear him playing the harmonica, and it's kind of eerie.
And the dog.
And the dog singing, his dog singing, which he had trained to sing along with the harmonica, which in any other case would be cute. In this case, kind of creepy. But yeah, he was an interesting man. And I say this, but in some ways, this is a very unique case. In other ways, it's not. So obviously it's unsolved. It was this house explosion, these murders, this wilderness escape. But in other ways, if you look at these cases of familicides or family annihilations, there's a pattern with many of these guys where they're harder to detect. And so that's something that we talk about. Like, Robert Fisher didn't have any documented history of physical domestic violence.
Right.
So it seemed to come out of the blue. But then if you look at his personality, he has the personality of a lot of these guys.
You're convinced this dude's listening to your podcast. I love that, because that tells me, go to the next episode. Go to the next episode. He's going to catch this guy. He's going to get him.
Yeah, I think if he's escaped successfully for 23 years, he's monitoring media. And it is wild to think. And you see that with a lot of these cases where this kind of case is extremely rare. And it's very, very rare to find someone after the case. But if you're getting away with it for 23 years, you're going to be monitoring what people are saying about you. Make sure that, I don't say there's a suspect that we just found yesterday in Charlotte and they're listening. So, yeah, I think that if he's alive, and I do believe he's alive, and as I said, many of the investigators do as well, so the people who have looked at the case the most, and also he was on the FBI's 10 most wanted list for almost 20 years. I think he's monitoring this. And it's interesting because obviously doing a show like this, as you do, you're speaking to a broad audience. But for me, I say it in the show, in many ways, sometimes I'm speaking to an audience of one. And that gets to, I truly, that's not a dramatic device. I truly am speaking to Robert Fisher. And so, for example, one of the things that we do, I speak to a friend of his who was a pastor, just learn about Robert Fisher as a person, but also ask him to speak to Robert Fisher spiritually about salvation, because I'm trying to appeal to him if he's listening in.
Yeah. What's really interesting about this podcast is that you've made it third dimensional and even fourth dimensional in the way that you're sharing a story, but you're including us. You physically see us. And like you said, you see Robert as well. I mean, how do you write this out?
Oh, man, I work 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. nonstop for many, many, many months. I go through like 200 script revisions. It's really tough because it's not just writing. It's not just speaking. I love doing interviews with people, and that comes naturally to me. But the writing is very difficult. I view us as journalism that can be entertaining. I don't view us purely as entertainment. And so we're really looking for new information. And even in the first few episodes, we found 2 new witnesses who changed the case timeline.
Yep.
We possibly located a new piece of physical forensic evidence. And so it's interesting. It's me just sitting alone at my desk, having a conversation in my head with this phantom fugitive, and so if I hopefully I still have my sanity in 6 months, check back in with me. But
do you think that his darkness, which came from him being in the Navy, do you think that darkness is what he held deep inside? Because my father never talked about his PTSD, and do you think Robert had this? He didn't want to talk about it, and all of a sudden one day it just went kaboom.
I think that it gets to his personality, that he was somebody who really wanted to be a hero. So obviously you have many, many, many people out there who are legitimate, real heroes. And I think Robert wanted to be one of them. So he joined the Navy. He worked on refueling aircraft. He was deployed overseas, I believe in the early. He was also a firefighter. He was an EMT. And then later, after he injured his back, he worked in a hospital setting. In emergency rooms and cardiovascular tech. So this is a guy who was in the Navy and a firefighter. And I think that he really wanted to be that hero. And in many ways, he wasn't. So he was surrounded by heroes, but he wasn't. And I think that really got to him. So it speaks to his personality a good bit. I don't think he had, that's a great question, but I don't think he had PTSD directly from that. However, when I spoke to some people who knew him when he was a firefighter, for example, I had some of his friends who were telling me that he responded to these really grisly car accidents where, for example, someone died by suicide and their car went up in flames. And so I think what it speaks to beyond PTSD or even a hero complex is that he was someone who did well under pressure. And so people ask, well, how could somebody do something like this? It's a horrific crime. And 99.999% of us are never going to do something or know someone who does something like this. But for him, he had the personality where he could pull something off like this and remain calm.
You know what's so interesting is that when I listen to the show, it's not just a personality, personalities. I just feel like that he's an imposter syndrome patient is what he is, and that right now he could be a school teacher or he could be running some business, because I'm the boss, I am the hero, I saved the company.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of the scary things is, does he have another family?
Ooh.
So that's something when one of the case detectives, TJ Duran in Scottsdale, he calls this the John List of our generation. And so for some of your audience will be familiar with List, but for those who aren't, List committed a very similar crime in New Jersey in the early 70s. And then he was on the lam for 18 years. And, 15 years in, of course, people were like, why are you still talking about this? And then 18 years, they caught him. I think that when they found List was remarried, for example. He had a wife who wasn't aware of who his real identity, clearly, because you're not, hopefully you're not going to marry somebody like that. But he was a chameleon. He hid things well. I think that it is the great mystery of this is, where is he? Why did he do this? But also, who was he? And that's something I really get to in the show, which is there's always this caricature of these guys, which is they're evil men. But that's all you ever hear. I mean, it's obviously true. I mean, nobody who's not evil doesn't do this in a way. But in many ways, also, they're normal people and they spiral out of control. And so I really try hard not only to locate Robert Fisher, but also to try to understand him, his personality. And I say in the show, sometimes I say nice, positive things about him. It's not that I like him, not that I'm trying to paint him in a good light. It's that I'm trying to understand him. And in that seeking, I've learned new things about him as a person, his personality, his physical health. And you never know when one of those tiny little clues is going to help find him.
John, how do I know you're not Robert?
Well, I was 12 at the time. How do I know you're not Robert?
You're right. Yeah, I'm finally reaching out to you, dude.
Oh, this is getting interesting. I'm not doing any of the rest of the interviews today. I'm going to stick with this one.
I mean, seriously, how would you know if that email you get or that Facebook post that you get? How do you know it's not him just using a different name?
Yeah, so first off, I eyeball it. I collected every single image of Robert Fisher that I could find. And people ask, well, why did he blow up the house? And the police will say maybe it was to destroy evidence. I think that's true in a way. I don't think it was to destroy evidence of the bodies or the murders, because he would have been smart enough to know that that's not going to entirely erase all that evidence. But what it was very successful at doing was destroying images and video of him. So we're working with a limited number of photos and video because, I was a child of the 90s, so I remember it a little bit, but this generation doesn't. What a pre-digital, pre-social media, pre-iPhone world. So I worked for 2 years and I found something like 28 photos of him. And so So yeah, I was hunting for that stuff, and I think I'm looking at every single lead that comes in. I personally review every single lead. Some of them are a little out there, some of them psychics, some of them are it really could be him. And we've already gotten photos of people, and I'm like, that kind of looks like Robert Fisher. And so one of the things that I'm doing to incorporate technology, and I'm doing this privately, obviously, is if we get an image, I'm running it through facial recognition software against unpublished images that I have of Robert Fisher to compare it, to say, well, I'm eyeballing it, our team is looking at it, and anything promising with permission we share with law enforcement. But also just generally, one day there's going to be a face that comes in that's like a 95% match, and my heart rate is going to go very, very high up. And it just gets to diligence. And this is true of the investigators. There are some wonderful people who really care about this story. And it's true of me as well, which is it's exhausting to do this kind of work because 999 out of 1,000 leads, there are going to be leads that don't go anywhere, but that one is the lead that leads you to him. And so again, going back to John List, America's Most Wanted featured the John List case. There was this famous paper mache head, not pre-digital times again, but it was stunning how much it ended up looking like him. But a neighbor of his reached out and she saw America's Most Wanted. And can you imagine sitting there thinking, yeah, I remember, I believe she was like, that kind of looks like our neighbor, and her kids were kind of laughing at her. And she was right. It was John List. So that is the great hope.
Wow. But you know what, though? Because we are listening to the podcast, we don't get to see the pictures. But the way that you use your words, you're a wordsmith in the way of designing things. Because the way you even set up the podcast in 2001, you lay out everything to where it really rocks our memory. So that if we hear something in this story, we're going to go, well, crap. I do remember that, and I do remember where I was. I saw him. I mean, you use your words in the right way for those that are listening.
No, I really appreciate that. I try hard. And like I said, I can go up through 200 scripts, versions of a script. So I really like to take people back to the moment. And these stories that I've done, the Alaska story, it was America during Watergate in Vietnam, and Alaska is booming as an oil state. 9/11, it was not only 9/11 itself, but like think about the night before. So I had a recording of it rained in New York City the night before 9/11. I had a recording of the rain because I find that moment just before is almost as fascinating as the moment of when something happens. And it really is also, I use this show to kind of chart where we've gone as a country since then and how much we've changed in terms of our politics and in terms of technology, just generally in terms of our culture. It's even for me, I was very young when this happened, but I remember bits and pieces of it. And everything just happened so rapidly. So I want to put people back in that moment, whether it's 1972, Alaska and DC, 2001, New York City, 2001 in this little suburb in Scottsdale, Arizona. So I really paint that. And I like also using textured audio, archival news clips, just to really put people back there. So I want people to close their eyes. I want to put people in the forests in Arizona. I want to put people in 2001 America, and start from there.
Wow. And I'll tell you, I don't know if every town has had a house that has exploded, but I mean, just in the past couple of years, just in this area, we've lost 2 houses. And you've made me wonder, should I be doing what John is doing and investigating beyond the headlines in a newspaper or what's on Channel 9 News? Because once it falls out of the headlines, it just blew up. What did? The house. Why? I don't know. But see, so something has driven you to start asking the right questions.
Yeah, I love investigating. That's the part that I like the best. The writing can be painful, but the investigation, I love. I go through thousands of pages of documents. I interviewed over 100 people. I'm really driven to find new information. And so, again, I view these shows, I hope they're entertaining for people to listen to, and I think they are, but I view them primarily as journalism. And I ask myself in the show, well, why am I doing this? I'm very grateful for this opportunity, but there has to be something that drives you to do this kind of work. And that's true of the investigators as well. Like there's a deep passion there. And I say it, that some of these cases like Fisher, it's high profile, but I found a ton of new information. And so there's always new information to find. And it's always exhilarating to find. I found 2 witnesses who changed the case timeline. I found possibly a new piece of forensic evidence. And we're only on episode 3, so there's a lot to come. But there is this deep passion where you get obsessive with it. And then always at some point you're almost burned out, you're tired, and you just keep pushing yourself to call everybody. And in my experience, those calls really pay off. So there are calls where I'm just like, oh my God, I don't want to make another phone call today, but I do. And then I find something absolutely incredible that really helps the case or changes the story.
Do you think that we're suffering from blind gorilla syndrome in the way that the evidence and everything is right there in front of us, but because there's so much going on, we don't see it? But here comes Jon, and here comes Jon with all the answers.
I think that the answers about what happened are there. The big question is, there are two big questions. Where is he and why did it happen?
Right.
So this is kind of an interesting case. It's not a question of what happened with the crimes or the house, or forensically, we have a good understanding of what happened. The mystery is, where is he? And there might be a few people out there who, and I think there are, who have information who could solve that. And so it's finding that one person that maybe wasn't investigated, which we interviewed people that were never interviewed by law enforcement or the media. So, just that alone is telling me well, this is worthwhile, because if you have people that have never spoken to the cops, the FBI, reporters, they might have new information. And in our experience, sometimes they do. So I think this is just a case where we know what happened. The question is, where is he? What happened to him? And we explore that in detail. And then also on a grander perspective, why did this happen? And is there anything that we can learn to apply to other cases of familicide or domestic violence? Where can people go to get you that information? Because when they hear this, let's say they're in Scottsdale right now and they're going, oh my God, I know where this guy is. Where can they go to reach out to you? So we direct people to neon33.com. We have a way that people can submit leads to us. You can look at a new wanted poster. You can click through to listen to the show Missing in Arizona on any podcast app. But the easiest way would be for people to go to neon33.com. And I highly encourage anyone who hears this, please go look at the new forensic image. I love it. Please come back to this show anytime in the future, Jon. You know that door is always going to be open for you. No, I appreciate it. And this is fun. I'll come back and we can discuss mysteries. This is the fun part. I appreciate it. Well, you be brilliant today, okay? Okay, thanks so much. Bye, Guy. Bye. Hello, Sally. How are you doing today?
Good morning, good evening.
Actually, I should say, how are you doing in my new tomorrow that hasn't arrived yet, because you're down there in Australia?
That's right. It's a great day. You'll love it.
Hey, congratulations on Transfigured Sea. You have come up with the most creative way to promote the beauty and the love and the atmosphere of the ocean without saying, this is a journalist's job, I'm going to talk like a journalist. No, you share a story.
Yes, it's a story. It's been called Enchanting. It's a story of two women who live in the sea. And you'll probably say, how can they breathe underwater? Well, one of them, called Laura, finds a special conch shell on the beach. It's just like this one. Can you see that?
Yeah.
And it's very beautiful. And she puts it in her pocket and keeps it with her. And it helps them breathe underwater. It directs them to where they have to go from one ecosystem to the next, just like a GPS. And it gives them information about all the beautiful and amazing sea creatures that they meet, just like Wikipedia.
You know, that's very interesting, the way that you just described that in the ecosystems that they meet, because a lot of people think it's just one giant ocean, when in fact there are many different layers and levels of an open sea.
Oh, yes, definitely. There are many different ecosystems just at the coast. There's the mangroves, the estuary, the rocks, the sandy beaches, and all sorts. And then, of course, when you get underwater, there's the shallow water, the coral reef, the deeper water, and Antarctic waters, which are different again. And then there are the deep waters that go down several kilometres.
One of the things that you put... One of the things you put I was going to say, one of the things that you put a lot of focus on is the fact that it's authentic. You're being very transparent because you really do bring together the essence of what you've learned as a student, and now you're teaching us through these paragraphs of a storyline.
Yes, that's right. It's a story about the women whose relationship is a bit shaky. Mm-hmm. So they think that if they work on their own selves to improve their own psychological makeups, that their relationship will get better. And it does. And while they're doing this inner exploration, they're also doing an outer exploration of the ocean and meeting lots of wonderful sea creatures in the process. So the book is nature writing, which means that the natural environment is given just as much attention as any other of the main characters in the book. And that's why it's kind of two books in one.
Oh, I'll give you that right there, because it is. Because, I mean, being a lover of the ocean, I do take it as the way that you're telling me the story of the ocean. But at the same time, I'm also in love with the story of these two women that have come together to explore. I mean, you're right. It is two books in one.
That's right.
How did you keep them separated in the way of, because when it comes to continuity, you've got to stay true to it. Was it difficult to write like that? Was it two separate personalities inside of you, Sally?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think I found it difficult because a lot of the things about the sea creatures, their shape, their form, their behavior, it often parallels behavior of human beings. And so throughout the book, the sea creatures were a parallel for the women. And towards the end of the book, that becomes very significant. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
A lot of our listeners have never been beneath the surface of the water. And that's one of those things that when I went down beneath the water, that changed my life forever. And that's what I like about this. When she goes into the water and she's able to breathe, you give us that atmosphere of, wow, now you can see what everything has always been written about. You can experience it yourself.
Oh, yes. There's nothing like a coral reef, a healthy coral reef.
Yes.
With all its colors and textures and shapes. It's just a wonderful thing. And every minute, the fish dart in from the other side, and then some other fish, a different color, come from the other angle. And it's just amazing. And it's very sad that the Great Barrier Reef in Australia is dying. The coral is bleaching, and that is because mainly of climate change.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, because with the extra CO2 in the atmosphere, that acidifies the water, and the coral can't tolerate that. And also the increase in temperature can't be tolerated by the smaller organisms in the sea, like the coral. And so that's why they're losing their colour, and all the beauty is gone.
Let me ask you a question when it comes to the coral in situations like that. Would you say that the coral today is the dinosaur of yesterday?
Oh, I hope not.
Oh, okay.
I do hope not.
Yeah. I mean, because it just seems like nobody wants to really delve in and really bring out the true message of saving the coral. I mean, it's not on the conversations of so many people here in America. It's like, save the planet. What are you talking about? Their climate, it's out of control. What are you talking about? I mean, what is it like for you down there in Australia? You at least are embracing it, are you not?
Oh, yes, a lot of people are aware of environmental issues now, which is wonderful, because when I first got interested many years ago, there was just a small group of us But now most people are aware to some extent, which is great. They don't always know the best thing to do to help. As far as the ocean goes, on my website, I have listed the threats to the ocean, and I have listed practical things that we can do to help protect the ocean. Mm-hmm. And my website is sallyannhunter.com.
Yeah. One of the things that really is weaved into this story, we have the story between the girls, and we also have the story of the ocean. I mean, there are three main characters in this book that you put a lot of love and attention on.
Yes, that's right. And there's a storm at one stage in the book, and that parallels the relationship between the women. They're going through a stormy stage of things. In fact, I could read you a poem if you would like that.
I was going to bring up the poetry. I swear to you, I was going to bring it up. So, yes, please, I would like to hear it.
Yes, because we love the ocean. We love the beautiful colours in the sea that change as the sky changes from turquoise to blue of different shades. But sometimes we don't like the ocean when it gets violent, for example. Now, Laura has a problem in her relationship with her mother, mm-hmm. and this poem is called Mother Sea, and it depicts the emotional problems between Laura and her mother. Mother Sea. Mother Sea rejected me, did not wash me into shore, did not cast me away with seaweed and shells. She threw me, jags and lashed me repeatedly, picking me up and throwing me onto knife points. Shreds and tears became food for the teeth of shark. Already masticated, my sensual self was gone. Threads of garments scattered in deeps under waves, sinking without form under weight of water, fading.
You embrace that atmosphere, don't you? My goodness. You know, speaking of the ocean changing, you also put a lot of focus on how the moonlight affects the ocean as well, that there is a connection there. And until I read about that, I didn't realize the moonlight had its own place in the story.
Yes. Yes, it does. And also the sunlight.
Yes.
The glitter on the surface of the ocean is similar to what Laura feels in her heart. It's as if two mirrors were opening in her heart, and there was a lot of shining light. And on the first page of the book, Laura, the mother of the sea sprite, experiences that. And she talks to herself, she muses about the nature of the sea, and the sea is a whisper of emotion and a memory of intuition. It is a place of change. It is a dream. It is the fullness of the subconscious.
Isn't this story pretty much what we all want to experience when we go to an ocean shore? We all want to be able to step into that ocean and become a part of that journey as well. Because I really felt like a child. I felt like an adult. I felt like an explorer. You really plant that seed in saying, you look beyond the pebbles of sand and step into the water.
Yes, but there's life in the sand as well.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
There's life everywhere. And life is pretty wonderful at resisting and being resilient. But we have to not hinder that process, but help it. Be part of nature and not opposed to it.
Yeah. Are you both girls? Are you the poet as well as the very confident Martha? Because I love me some Martha. I love tapping into that confidence.
The confidence of Laura, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, she is a poet and a biologist. And yes, I wrote all the poems in the book.
See, it is about you then. because I mean you're writing about both characters, and it's like you do it so elegantly and so connected. It's like going, oh my God, I love how she split the everything together here, and it's like, oh, just dive into it. Give me more.
Oh, thank you. That's wonderful.
Who is...
Yes, well, people can obtain a copy of the book, Transfigured Sea, from my website. So that's sallyannhunter.com. And they're able to find out about the different books I've written, including Transfigured Sea, and to order a copy of the book, either from myself or from Barnes & Noble or Amazon or from their local book shop as well.
Yeah. Wow. You've got to come back to this show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open. I live in a forest. I totally understand nature. I protect my trees. I protect my soil. And you're doing the same exact thing when it comes to protecting those open seas.
Wow, that's wonderful. Yes, I read a book about a woman who lived in a forest. She loved the trees.
Yes. So please come back to this show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you, Sally.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Well, you be brilliant today, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.